Charlie Played Oboe by Henry Iverson Magee. Charlie was your average 11-year-old boy. And I mean all boy. He'd rather be outside chasing a frog through his mom's flower bed than sitting inside being a couch potato. Benny, the family beagle, was his constant companion and shadow. When Charlie went to the corner store for a soda, Benny was right behind, tracing his every step. It was nothing to find them rolling in the front lawn, or running through the park across the street, or just lying in the grass, looking at animal pictures in the clouds. It was not that he didn't want to play video games, or watch all the latest tunes on TV. It was that his mom and dad couldn't afford to buy those things. They lived paycheck to paycheck. Food on the table and rent were a monthly struggle. His own imagination was his entertainment. No new clothes to wear to school, Charlie gladly wore the used jeans from the second-hand store. He humbly wore his baseball cap and t-shirt and took no thought that life should be any different. Summer break from school was 3 months to be himself and to not be accountable to clock, teacher, or schedule. It was to his dismay that his parents received a letter in the mail assigning him to the next grade in the fall. His new teacher was to be Mrs. Marshall, a goodly one, loved by all her students. And for the first time, Charlie would be invited to participate in the middle school band. Parents were to bring their child during summer break to choose their instrument. Since his dad couldn't get off from work in time to bring their only car, his mom allowed him to walk the 12 blocks to the band room. Time was running late when Charlie walked through the door. Most of his classmates had already come and gone. Charlene was leaving with her mom and her flute, Alicia with her clarinet, David his trumpet. Robert was trying to get air through a tuba with band director Mr. Smith giving guidance and support. "Well, what instrument did your parents rent for you, Charlie?" Sheepishly, Charlie said, "I don't have an instrument." "Well, I'm afraid that you have to have an instrument to be in our band program. The school owner ones have already been assigned to those who will be in the marching band. There are none of those remaining." Noticing Charlie's disappointment and moved to go to the door, Mr. Smith grasped at ideas quickly. Just a moment. Come back here, Charlie. Let's see what we've got in this closet over here." Mr. Smith opened the double-door closet that usually stored school-owned instruments, but it appeared empty. Except for one black case in the bottom corner. Mr. Smith grabbed it and promptly headed to a table with Charlie to see what its contents might be. When opened, Mr. Smith began assembling the black tube. Charlie had no idea what this was. "What is it?" he puzzled. "An oboe," said Mr. Smith as he put the last tube in place and then tightened the slender reed that completed the mouthpiece. "This is an old reed, but this will at least let you give it a try. Do you want to try it?" The oboe, being an unusual instrument, seemed right for an unusual boy. "Let me try." "Well, hold your lips like this, as if you were blowing down on a narrow straw." Squeaks and squawks were the sounds that pierced the echo of the band room, but he was determined to make this work. "Charlie, now, if you take this instrument, you can't be in the marching band. The oboe is not a marching instrument. It's for the concert band later in the school year. The school will loan it to you, and my wife can give you lessons during the rest of the summer and then after school this fall. Chrissy played oboe in high school and won a scholarship to play in a college symphonic orchestra." Moving forward, each week Mrs. Smith did, indeed, meet with Charlie. "Practice," she said. "Every day for 1/2 hour when you get home." That was no problem. With few friends and no entertainment at home, Charlie would spend all his extra time practicing. He learned to finger the keys just like the beginner book showed, and he held his lips just like Mrs. Smith showed. It was not a pretty sound when he got it right, or when he got it wrong. As Charlie often practiced in the backyard, Benny would put his head on the ground, not caring for the music and noise. It was a concert for one when Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or Jingle Bells was attempted. "Sure sounds like a flock of geese squawking," the neighbors said among themselves. But as the summer days turned to fall, squawks turned into musical notes and squeaks turned into lines of songs. The marching band practiced 7th period. Charlie did his homework in the library and then met with Mrs. Smith. The marching band played their first time at a middle school football game, and they got to march in the senior high homecoming parade. Charlie, he could only watch from the stands. The end of daylight savings time made time short at the end of the day to be outside. Leaves were fallen and a chill was in the air, but that meant that it was time to start the middle school concert band. Mrs. Smith had taught Charlie for 16 weeks now, and he had practiced faithfully. For the first time, Charlie was asked to come to 7th period band. All were assigned chairs. Charlie, being the only oboe, was behind the clarinets and to the side of the French horns. Mr. Smith announced that the band's first concert would be a Christmas concert, only 7 weeks away. Also, one of the songs would be used in the Christmas parade. Music was handed out in folders. Students were encouraged to practice at home. The first song to learn was a medley of familiar songs. The second was an arrangement of Jingle Bells. Mr. Smith gave the band instructions on how they were to sit, hold their instruments, and follow his instructions. "Eyes must be on both the music and the director at all times," said Mr. Smith. "That will take some practice." The first attempt at music was like herding cats. Or hurting them, maybe. It took multiple attempts to even come close to coming in on time. Only a man who loved music and who loved to teach children music could survive such, yes, noise. Mr. Smith, though, he did. The reward for such patience was 2 lines well done of "O Come All Ye Faithful" after an hour. The reward for Charlie was that after months of constant practice, excellent instruction from Mrs. Smith, and the love of a faithful friend, Benny, Charlie was well beyond the other students at this time. He was not only well beyond those in his band, but also well beyond others his age, period. The ugly duckling oboe player was quickly becoming a beautiful swan. Even the neighbors didn't complain anymore. Some even smiled when hearing his part on "O Come All Ye Faithful" coming from the backyard. Charlie's dad even had to take notice, and when asked to come to the concert, he thought this ought to be something he should make time for on his busy schedule. And when Mr. Smith raised his arms, directing the concert band, all parents and guests were in agreement, as Jingle Bells got their attention. They were glad that they had come to support these students. Mr. Smith thanked the audience for their generous round of applause. He spoke of the progress the students had made because of the hard work they had put in, both at school and at home. He thanked them for allowing the wonderful privilege of teaching their students. "Now," said Mr. Smith, "you're in for a special treat." He raised his arms and confidently led the band as they began the Christmas medley. Everyone recognized "O Come All Ye Faithful" and "O Little Town of Bethlehem." And then, to the surprise of all, softly and warmly, a solo by an instrument and a boy with which most were unfamiliar. "Away in the Manger" played like they had never heard. Haunting, but beautiful. There was a wow in unison from the audience. The whole band transitioned to Hark the Herald Angels. A few tears even glistened the eye of several, and with pride and love, Charlie's dad and mom were included in that number. Yes, that was Charlie that played the oboe. Practice and encouragement were as certain as the cold winter's air and the passing of joyous holidays. Charlie continued to meet with the band 7th period, but also Mrs. Smith kept up her bargain to instruct him weekly. Concert practice was now serious business for the middle schoolers after such a hearty applause. Mr. Smith doted in that he had such a hard-working group of children, or as he now put it, young men and women. Charlie was still the same boy inside. He practiced at home more than ever, but to him it was not a thing of effort or hard work. It was something he enjoyed. He enjoyed this almost as much as playing in the fresh fallen snow with Benny. However, he could not stay outside as long as he wished. The cold was just too much. A warm bedroom, with Benny stretched out on the covers while Charlie practiced, was all right for them both. Opportunities to play publicly continued. Mr. Smith arranged for Charlie to play with the marching band during the Christmas parade. Charlie did not march, but Mrs. Smith stood with him as the band stopped downtown, and Charlie was able to do his Away in the Manger. A hush fell over the small gathered crowd as they were eager to hear such an unusual sound from this unusual boy. Mr. Smith even arranged a longer solo part for the big spring concert. When it was time for this one, the auditorium was filled like never before, and no one was disappointed. "What a wonderful group of students! And who is that boy and what is that instrument?" rang out from all corners. Approaching a year, Mrs. Smith asked her husband if some of the more gifted students might perform a recital concert. Money raised from tickets to the concert would go to provide new instruments and supplies for the band. The junior and senior high directors were told of the idea, and even more excitement was created. Mrs. Smith's former college concert director agreed to judge the participants. For a prize, he offered a tour of the campus concert hall for the winners' families. While others were celebrating the 4th of July and a host of other summer activities, Charlie and a group of his mates from the concert band met daily with Mr. and Mrs. Smith and their tutors. Their recital was just a few weeks away, and Charlie, he was ready to play the oboe. Thank you for listening to Charlie Played Oboe by Henry Iverson Magee. Henry Iverson Magee is an accomplished public speaker, pastor, educator, and farmer. He grew up in southern Mississippi and made a name for himself in Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and, indeed, his home state of Mississippi. He's always been a writer, publishing in numerous newspapers and other publications over the years. Like many stories, this story comes from yarns he used to spin for his sons and other children. Hopefully, we'll feature more work from him here in the near future. The backing tracks for this story were taken from the Muse Open at museopen.org. Muse Open is a 501c3 nonprofit focused on increasing access to music by creating free resources and educational materials. They provide recordings, sheet music, and textbooks to the public for free, without copyright restrictions. As they say, their mission is to set music free. A perfect resource for a story like Charlie Played Oboe. The first piece heard here is Fantasy in C, composed by Georg Philipp Telemann and performed by Paul Arden Taylor. The second piece is Chansonnette, composed by Hamilton Harty and performed by Baldur den Devel. The remainder of the music is different sections of La Gracieuse, composed by Louis de Quay de Valois and performed by Jennifer Paul. The first piece is being used under a public domain Mark 1.0 license. The second piece is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 unported license. And all the music by Miss Paul is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 unported license. A sincere thank you to MuseOpen, Mr. Arden Taylor, Mr. Dendeval, and Miss Paul for providing access to such great music. Next up, we have some ponderings on love from guest author Jeff Glasser.